Hello all and welcome back to my channel. Here we are for our spring slash February slash March update because it's been a while. I mean, life just gets to you. I got my job that is ramping up for the year as we end Q1. And then of course my two babies, my dogs here. Now that we're going into springtime, everything is just becoming more active. Me, my dogs, and of course the collection here. So to jump into our spring update, I want to talk about light. Now, light is something that is going to be increasing. As you know, we just completed our daylight savings. Hopefully we end that soon, but we just sprung forward and the sun is coming out earlier and soon it's going to be going down later, and that signals to our plants that the slow season slash for many blooming season is now ending and we are going into the grow season. So we're going to see lots of leaf growth because the plants photosynthesize with their leaves, and now that we have increased light, they're going to increase their foliage. Now, I do grow under lights, so I increase my light durations manually. So for March, mainly, I do increase them to about, I believe, 13 and a half to 14 hours. So we have the sunrise about, we have my lights turn on about 6:50 and then they turn off around 8:50. So about 14 hours. And of course, that will signal to the plants that the summertime is approaching, because I do ramp my lights up to 16 hours ultimately in the peak of the summertime. So my plants, well, most of them at least, are actually already accustomed to this cycle. And the new ones, we'll see. Now that I live in a desert setting, let's see, it's about mid-March right now, and my home already maintains 72 degrees as we approach noon and 1 o'clock. And that is pretty warm. When I was back in DC, the temperature was maybe in the 60s until April. And to be in the 70s now is quite interesting, which is why the increased light duration is even better, because when it is warm, the plants will work a bit more. They will put out more leaves. In many instances, the leaves will be a bit bigger than normal, and they will, in mostly all instances, be bigger than the last leaf. And they're like, I don't know how to think of them, as like solar panels, I guess. They just grab as much energy as they can. And the more green you have in the leaf, the more light that you want to give it. Now, touching again on light, because I did jump into temperature, but you also just want to make sure that in tandem with the temperature, you don't have a lot of heat, whether it's direct sunlight or you're growing under lights in your home. The good thing about LEDs, which I grow under and I highly recommend, is that they do not emit heat. You can even have your plants touching the lights and they will be fine. Some of the plants may react to a bit of the high level of light, but I've never seen a negative reaction. So for example, many of the plants, if they are receiving lots of light, they will turn red, which is the anthocyanin pigments. It's almost like they give themselves a tan in order to endure that sunlight. Now, some people see it as a negative because they prefer green leaves. Some people see it as a neutrality. It really doesn't matter, because this is just the plant's coping mechanism to deal with the new situation. And some people love it. Some people will purposely increase the light to get those red pigments in your plants. Now, jumping on to temperature, again, we're slightly higher than January. The highs right now are about 70 to 75. The lows are about 60 to 68. Now, I believe last month the lows were between maybe 60 and 65. So you can see that increase, because now that we have more sun, the temperatures are going to drop a lot slower. So the transition temps into spring, from spring into summer. Sorry about that. My dog is having way too much fun playing, but I didn't want to stop him, so I stopped the video. But what I was saying before, I got all mumble jumbled from spring to summer, summer to spring, blah, blah. What I wanted to say is from winter into spring, the temperatures have, a gradual increase. But from what I'm being told, from spring to summer, we're going to have a jump. So when we do that update video, I'll definitely let you know how the temperatures have affected the collection. For now, because the increase is so gradual and it's a bit slow, there's not really a drastic effect. All there is happening is the blooms that are coming out, and the growth that's happening is a result of the seasonal transition. And with that, let's go ahead and move on to watering. So with watering, as you can imagine, because of the increase in temperatures, you're going to have an increase in watering. Me right now, I am up to about once a week, but it's every 6 days. So I'm leaning on the curve of twice a week, but I'm not going to do that because I'm going to essentially leave small reservoirs of water in all of my cups on the days that I water. And hopefully that'll keep my schedule to one time a week, because I really do not want to water twice a week. And with watering, the other topic that I wanted to touch on was the medium. So the medium or potting, the potting materials that I use, whether it be dirt or soil for my houseplants, and the moss or moss and bark for the orchids, which are a bit more epiphytic, so they don't require a soil type of mix. I am going to transition everyone to have moss in their pots for more water retention, just to combat the lack of humidity inside of my house. I have tried it on a few plants. My bird of paradise, I do have a lot, if not all of my phals in moss, and there's a lot of moss in the pots of my paths, but I'm definitely going to move into putting moss more toward the top of the pots. That way I can spray more often and just add bits of water a bit more often. And the moss being at the top or closer to the top, even if it's not perfectly on the top, the moss being there will help the water retention on the top of my pots, because they dry out very, very, very quick. And on that, let us segue into humidity. Now, lately, my humidity has been a bit of an anomaly. In a shot that I put up before, let's see where it's at now. My humidity is 43% right now, and I don't have any of my humidifiers running except for the one that is on the floor. And that really wouldn't affect the ambient temperature of my entire grow space, which the thermostat tells me. And even right now it's at 43%. And the highs and lows, according to the thermostat, are at 14 and 90%. So all that, although it's a drastic high and low, to see 90% and not have my humidifiers run for almost 2 days is pretty interesting. So I know that it's something I'm gonna have to monitor even more closely as we move into the summer season, where we are not going to have any humidity. So again, the next video is probably gonna have a bit more of an in-depth and detailed observation on the humidity. Now, my favorite part. So I just want to walk around and talk about some of the plants that are doing things, and just as a grouping. So, the video that's going to play in the background is still going to show all the collection, but I am going to talk about my houseplants, and then my Paphiopedilums and my Phalaenopsis being the orchids. Now, the houseplants, the orchids, everything is basically just growing. I have a lot of my orchids, especially the store-bought standards, in bloom because you purchase them in bloom. A lot of them are having a bit of challenges. I do have a couple of them going through bud blast, and I do think it's because of the temperature changes and the fact that these don't naturally bloom in warmer temperatures. The standard Phalaenopsis that we purchase in the grocery stores normally bloom in the winter and in the springtime. However, because I live in the desert, my spring isn't very pronounced. It is more of a transitional season than anything. It's a couple of weeks and then we have summer. My summer is going to be here in about 2 more weeks once March ends. And when I was in DC, that was very different. You know, you actually went through a springtime in March, in April, in May, and you crept up to the summer in June. Here, we're going to be 80 degrees by April. So I'm really going to learn how to transition the orchids and maybe how I'm going to have to adjust some of my growing techniques, mainly the watering, since I grow under light. So I'm not really concerned about the sun or light or fertilizer. I'm really just concerned about the watering. I do have fertilizer in all my pots, so I don't have to worry about mixing something all the time. And I understand that these slow release fertilizers normally only release when it's warm. So basically my collection does get a bit of fertilizer all year because it's warm all year. When it's cool, I'm sure that they don't. And you know, I'm not watering as much when it's a bit cooler. So I'm not really concerned about them being over fertilized or over watered, if you will, because you know, if it's like 65 degrees and it's a watering day, 9 times out of 10, most of the collection is not ready to be watered again because it's still a bit moist. And moving along, the Paphiopedilums, these are basically all just growing and putting on a crap ton of leaves. I do have my Lowii in bloom. I purchased it as a Richardianum and it has since been reclassified into its own species as Lowii. Lowii, I believe, used to be a classification of Richardianum and now it's its own species. So there we have that. And basically the houseplants are doing the same. I don't have a lot of blooming houseplants, some Hoyas, some philodendrons, some pothos, but they're all putting out leaves and I'm pretty excited. I do have a couple of them, you know, on a ledge that's not in my grow space, and they seem to be doing just fine in the north window. Again, the update is probably going to be a bit more detailed once summer does hit and they experience a bit, I'm tripping over my own feet here, and they experience a bit more sunlight duration. I know that the intensity is probably not going to change since I have a north window, but the duration is, and they don't grow under grow light, so I'm hoping that there's going to be a bit more of a change once the light duration does adjust and become longer. And with that, I think I will leave you all. I'll probably put up some pics of some of the plants I have also in my kitchen setup. Ruby, my first phal, is also over there, along with, I also have like 3 phals in a pot. I call them the Powerpuff Pinks. They're 3 different Phalaenopsis. Well, they're 3 different types of blooms, 3 different looking blooms, but the plants all look the same. I purchased it from Lowe's at, I think at like $15 because it was half off, originally $30, and because they weren't in bloom and they were just leaves, it was half off, so I thought it was a snatch. And you know, just a couple of things: Calathea, a Cattleya over here that is mixed with a Brassivola, so it's a Brassiocat. Then we have a couple of Calatheas I just mentioned, and Chinese evergreen, and also a philodendron Birkin, which I also got on sale. The Birkin is putting out these white leaves, so I'm not too sure if that's a good thing, and I don't know, I really wish it would put out a bit more green leaves, but one of the white leaves that it put out is turning a bit green, so that's cool. And with that, I'm gonna end. my video smooth little wrap up with a couple of my other social media pages, such as Facebook and Instagram. I do go by The Right Path. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you want to leave some comments down about any of the plants you saw that I didn't talk about, or any of your updates that you have for spring, because living in the desert has really shifted my paradigm on growing plants. And the more advice I hear, the more advice I can give, the better we can all be. And I'll leave you all with that. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.